Hello, Deborah with Preservation Publications and Preservation 2012 on YouTube. Today I'd like to talk to you about neocolonialism in the world, or what the World Bank is calling land grabs. Essentially, countries are going around purchasing or leasing huge portions of land to produce food and fuel for their own countries. Nearly 140 million acres were involved in land grabs to date, and that's the equivalent to all the area set aside in the United States for wheat and corn combined. Now, the reason that the wealthier nations are trying to gain access to land, usually from the poorer countries, are because they can no longer produce enough food to provide for their own citizens, and because they're using a huge portion of it to create biofuel. So what this means essentially is that food and fuel are now pegged. When the price of oil goes up, the price of food will go up, and that'll continue as long as that balance is maintained. Now, the reasons that food production has peaked varies across the board, but I'm going to give you a little information about each. For every 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature, we can expect a 10% loss in food production. And to top all this off, our technology has peaked. We are using the best of the best that we have available, and it's just not good enough anymore. Now, what happens is that the local people, which tend to be very poor, are pushed off the land. And because it has been owned, if you will, or used traditionally as opposed to easily identifiable on paper or through land titles and so forth, they have no way of proving their rights to the land. So they're being pushed off not only physically, but legally as well. But the fact of the matter is that the number of jobs they create are usually filled by people that they bring into the country to manage the lands. The rest are local laborers. They do improve the infrastructure, but only to the point that they are capable of moving the food from the place that it is grown to the ports where it's shipped out. Now, China is a huge purchaser of land outside of its own country. Following close behind are Saudi Arabia, South Korea, and many European nations. Most of the land grabs are in Africa and South America, in nations where they are dependent upon the United Nations Food Program in order to feed themselves. So it's kind of a double whammy for them. Not only are they being refused access to land to produce their own food, that's being removed, and they're forced to rely upon UN handouts. Now, there are countries that are trying to resist land grabs, such as Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. Well, Argentina and Brazil are oil producers, so they have that kind of leverage that they can get away with that. Poorer countries that do not produce oil don't have a chance in fighting this kind of takeover. Now, many countries are dealing with the reduced production of food by curtailing exports or completely stopping them altogether, which is what Russia did last year. Vietnam's done it. China's done it. The rice yield per acre in Japan has not risen in 16 years. Wheat yields have plateaued in Britain, France, and Germany, Western Europe's three largest wheat producers. Russia lost 40% of its grain harvest last year. And if you want an idea of what's happening to us, I'm going to refer you to my last video. And the people that are suffering the most are the poor countries. The countries that cannot produce enough food for themselves due to lack of technology and fuels to support the farming industry, and haven't got the ability to produce oil. They are going to be the first sacrificed in the food wars and are already dying because of it. So what can we expect to see in this country and outside of this country? First, you can look for food riots. That's already happening all over the place. You can look for revolutions all over the place. You're seeing it right now in North Africa and the Middle East, where people are hungry. Because of peak oil and having reached the peak of production at this point, and because food is pegged to oil, as the price of oil goes up, the price of food will go up too. So the two things in this country that were exceptionally inexpensive were food and fuel, and now we're going to catch up with the rest of the world. Those two items are exceptionally costly, and they will only get higher and higher. You can expect to see food rationing outside of the United States and finally inside the United States. As I've said before, we are buffered in many ways because we have a lot of wealth that we have to move through before we get to the same place that most countries are outside of the United States. This is an international phenomenon. This is not unique to poor countries, and it's not unique to rich countries. This is the way of life that's going to be set up and displayed for all of us from here on out. So these are the things that we need to do to survive this mess. We need to learn to live locally. We need to produce locally. We need to reclaim our soil, making it rich and productive again. And I'm not talking about agribusiness. I'm talking about the soil that's available to you in your yards, along your parkways, in your parks, every place local to where you live and where you are. You need to purchase heirloom seed. You need to establish water harvesting systems and irrigation systems that do not waste water. And all of us need to stop wasting water in general, period. We should probably be reducing our meat and dairy consumption. And for those of us that have a little bit extra land and can afford it, we should be raising chickens and ducks, putting in fish farms in our swimming pools, growing worm farms in our hot tubs to support the fish and the chickens and the ducks. And we have to learn how to grow food on rooftops and balconies and fire escapes. I think the most important thing that we have to do is give up our illusions. The government isn't going to fix this. The government can't fix this. And we have to stop focusing on what we're calling the bad guys and playing the blame game. It makes no difference if Wall Street has all of your money right now. It makes no difference that all they do is produce money and are getting huge bonuses. That doesn't matter, because all they've got are digits on paper. The true wealth in this country is where you're living and what you're sitting on right now. And that's where you have to focus your attention. Not on Wall Street. Forget them. Let them have their digits. Let them have their money on paper. It will do them no good. If you have all the money in the world, it is of no value if you haven't got things. I don't believe that holding gold and silver is going to do any of us any good. For one reason and one reason alone: you can't eat either of them. And food is the new money. Food is the new currency. And this is just my opinion. I'm not a financial advisor, but I think holding gold and silver is a total waste of time. It will not have value until well after this mess is all over. And then there'll be so much gold and silver available that it'll be worthless. Everybody will have it. Having money will not save you. It just kind of puts you into the digital wealth category. Now, as far as investing any more time, energy, or money into the political wranglings of this country or international, that's a waste of time too. There are no answers there. The only answers that there are the ones that are found inside of you. What you can do to protect you, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and your communities. That's where your attention needs to be. Not in government. Not in Wall Street, and certainly not in what the media tells you is important. I understand that a lot of people are upset about Obama's birth certificate. And a lot of press has been just jumping on that bandwagon. And I'm telling you something right now, it makes no difference. It makes no difference. It has nothing to do with what's happening to you and your family right now. Forget about it. Ignore it. They took out Osama bin Laden. They took him out yesterday. They took him out 6 years ago. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with what's happening to you and your family right now. Don't get caught up in media and the sensational feelings associated with what they're trying to tell you is important, because it's not. You are important. You and your family and friends are important, and that's where we need to focus our energies and our time. Now, as most of you have figured out, I tend to feel quite passionate about the things that I'm talking about. I try and keep it toned down, but frequently I lose it. Food wars and oil wars are here to stay. Don't think that we're immune. It'll happen here soon. We just have a lot of wealth that we have to move through before it does. Just think about it. Until next time, for our families, our neighbors, our friends, and our communities, preservation.